Drew Allison is the creator and owner of Gray Seal Puppets, a puppet company that specializes in live puppet shows, many of which have received Unima citations, on-camera puppetry, and custom character creation. He is the co-author of the very influential puppet building book, The Foam Book, and he puppeteered on the feature film Elmo in Grouchland. Drew Allison is my guest on this episode of Under the Puppet. You're listening to Saturday Morning Media, and now, back to our show. Welcome to the show that is preserving puppetry through the personal stories of professional puppeteers. My name is Grant Pachoco, and this is Under the Puppet. Well, Drew Allison, I'm so excited to welcome you to Under the Puppet.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I have so much that I want to talk to you about, but I'm going to start as I always do every episode and ask, do you remember your first exposure to puppetry, the first time you saw puppets?
I do. Yeah, it's pretty vivid. It was mostly the puppets on Captain Kangaroo and just being fascinated with those characters and trying to make characters of my own and sort of do Captain Kangaroo puppets. And I remember for some reason there was this huge box of old cellophane rolls of tape. And my mother said, here, you can use these for whatever you want. And I would just take that terrible tape that was really hard to get off the roll and try to wrap it around my fingers and create a little head and sort of do puppets like that. So that was definitely very influential for me. But the guy that really set me off and got me rolling on this path is Daniel Lords. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but my parents took me to see him when I was like 10 years old. He was performing at a college near where we lived, and he was a marionettist. And his thing was he was a solo artist, but he would have like 100 marionettes on stage at once, and he'd be like pulling and strings all over the stage. And for a 10-year-old, it just kind of blew me away. It was amazing.
Yeah, and were your parents creative growing up?
They had their creative outlets for sure. My dad, he had a history with Scholastic books. His whole career was with them. So there were lots of books around our house. My mother was a artist. So definitely, yeah, they were very supportive of everything I tried to do.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I know because you posted a video on your Instagram page where you showed a puppet book that you got for, I think you said for Christmas.
Yes,
And so can
yeah.
you tell us about that book and how you got that book and how that started you on this path?
Yeah, for sure. It was Helen Fling's book, How to Make Marionettes. And um, I sound, very kind of marionette oriented in the early days. And I obviously have drifted away from that style of puppets. But I think after going to see Daniel Lords, these marionettes were on the front of my brain. So they got me this book, and there was this long list of supplies you needed to get to create these characters. And I remember that we would drive all over town looking for different things like little cakes of beeswax that we had to use for something, and plastic wood and plaster of Paris. And it was an adventure. But it was very, it was a real process, as you know, to create puppets that way. And that's, I think, what sort of pushed me towards foam, because that was more of an immediate gratification using foam. It was tangible. It was something that I could take and sort of see something right away. Whereas the marionette process for me was sort of a delayed gratification that I at 10, 11, 12 years old, I didn't have the patience for, I don't think.
Do you think there's things in the Marionette book that you still use today, like building practices or design ideas that you still use today for your own work?
Probably absolutely. It instilled in me just the concept of designing a character, which comes up all the time, and the idea of using sort of thinking divergently and using materials that were intended for one purpose and using them for something else. Like this jute that I had lying around, I sort of kind of untwisted it and unbraided it and brushed it out, and it became the hair of that first marionette character. So just thinking about materials in other ways, to use them in other ways than they've been intended for, I think was something that I got from that book for sure.
And you are the owner and creator of Gray Seal Puppets, and I read somewhere that you started that in high school, right? You started Gray Seal Puppets in high school?
Yeah, so I did this whole puppet thing kind of rolled on through middle school, and I started doing puppets at birthday parties. It was fun, and then somebody said, "Well, we'll pay you $10 to come do something at my little boy's birthday," and I was like, "Oh man, wait a minute, I can get paid for this." So I think in middle school I had this grand idea for a company, and it was called Puppa Vents because I did puppets and also ventriloquism. I thought so. I took the Mayor Home School course in ventriloquism, and I saved up for a Jerry Mahoney doll and had that ventriloquist figure. So I would do a little puppetry and then a little ventriloquism. I kind of, got into high school and wanted to get a little more serious about it. And so I was in love with the Elton John album, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And the last deep cut on that album is Gray Seal. And I always loved that song. And so in high school, I just started calling it Gray Seal Puppets. Gray Seal Productions Puppets is what it was back then. So
Well, I got two questions out of what you said. Do you still do ventriloquism? That is my first question.
I do not do any more ventriloquism. You gotta hone your strengths. You gotta realize it's like a colleague of mine that we work together, and she always says we all have our strengths, and I don't think ventriloquism was one of mine. So no.
And then my other question is, when you were doing these shows at birthday parties or wherever you're doing these shows, were you writing your own material? Were you creating your own shows, or were you borrowing from other things?
Yeah, I'm sure there was some definitely being influenced by other puppeteers that I saw, but these I learned early on, as do a lot of puppeteers, especially in that market, that a short vignette works a lot better than one long story. So I remember them as being just short little, almost social commentary, sort of using puppets even when I was that age as a vehicle for satire and exaggeration and things like that. So that's what I remember. Just short little vignettes that would be over before the audience got too restless. That was the idea.
And I read in an interview you did that you studied theater at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington, but like performing and doing theater really wasn't your main goal. You wanted to be a photojournalist, right?
Wow, you've done your research. Yeah, that's exactly right. I was at UNCW and I did get a degree in photojournalism. And right when I got out of college, I went to work for a filmmaker in Charlotte, North Carolina, which was the only other real job that I had other than being a puppeteer. And that was so valuable because we do a lot of on camera work here. And I was this was a small company. And if you were on the production staff, you did a little bit of everything: pre production, lighting, camera work, post production. So I got all of that script writing and all of that over the 3 years that I was there, and kind of a real concentrated sort of application. So I took that and use that to this day in the on camera work that we do. So that was very valuable.
You also, though, when you were in college, you got a minor in theater, right?
Yeah, I had a when I got there to UNC Wilmington, I sort of unabashedly went to the theater department and said I was a puppeteer and really needed a place to work, which in hindsight was just an unbelievable ask. And they were like, "We'll go over there to the Keenan Auditorium and talk to Doug Swank, who was a professor there, but he also sort of managed this on-campus auditorium." And I asked him that same question, and he just he looked at me for a long time. It seemed like forever. It was probably 30 seconds. And he had this mustache, and he was just kind of pulling on his mustache, just staring at me. And I was like, what is this guy doing? And then he finally said, come with me. And so there was a vacant faculty office there in the auditorium. And he said, would this work? And my whole time on campus, I had that little faculty office. And he also mentored me. I created 2 full productions while I was there, and he directed them and told me what was good and told me what was bad, and just a lot of help and theater theory, and just it was he was an amazing mentor to me. I'll never forget him.
Do you think it's important for puppeteers, especially when they're starting out or they're early in their career, is to find a mentor to kind of bounce ideas off and talk to?
I don't know about a lone mentor, but when I was 14, I went to my first national puppet festival, which was in New Orleans. Nancy Staub put it on, and man, my parents again. I'll say another thing about them. They put me on a plane. Off I go by myself to New Orleans. I don't know that parents would allow a 14-year-old now to do that. But so I showed up at the festival on the campus of Tulane University and just soaking up all that knowledge that was around from everybody, not just one mentor, but everybody in general. Everybody was so willing to share and encourage. That to me, I think the Puppeteers of America and Unima USA, those are such valuable resources for sharing knowledge, and I think puppeteers have that willingness to sort of share. It's just amazing. So I remember just meeting these fantastic people, David Srodiak, Nancy Staub, a lot of people that I still love and admire today. So that's what I would say to answer your question. Join the P of A, join Unima USA, and let them work their magic on you.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you actually about that later because I think the first time we haven't met personally in physical space yet, but the first time I saw you was at the 2019 festival, and when someone said, "Oh yeah, that's Drew Allison," I was like, "What? The phone book? That's it!" And it was like the last night, and you were busy with the everything else going on, and I was like, "Oh, I wish I could have met him." So,
Oh man,
but I want to ask you, you were the director of one of the puppetry festivals in 2007, right?
that's exactly right. Bob Nathanson and I were co-directors of the Puppet Rampage. Lion Forest Hill did some amazing animation. He did our logo, and Nancy Smith and Jim Hammond were the artistic directors. And it was an amazing, exhausting week, and we've never done it since. But it was quite an experience. We
Yeah,
were
that's what I was gonna ask if you would do it again, but, it does sound like a lot of work.
Yeah, I think you need that decompression time after a national festival. At least we did. If you catch us at a low moment right now, maybe we might say yes again, but it's a lot of work. It's a big ask for sure.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you, because looking over your credits, you did work on Elmo and Grouchland, and I would love to know how you got involved on that production.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, and that was a great experience. They shot that film in Wilmington, where I went to college. There was a big film industry there. I was living in Charlotte, and I think the casting director may have just because a lot of puppeteers from the Carolinas were used as the B puppeteers. So I think they probably just either got a P of A directory or just looked locally for puppeteers, and that's how they found me and some other puppeteers that I am good friends with: Bob Lynch, Tim Perotti, Lisa Stirs. And the biggest takeaway I had from that was, other than the food, which was amazing. Um, I'm a big food guy, so not only did we have these amazing lunches and dinners and breakfasts, but the sandwich girl that would come around and just the craft services, that was my favorite thing. But as a solo puppeteer, I'm used to wearing all the hats. From marketing and booking my own shows, building my own characters, performing my puppets. So when you become a small cog in a giant wheel like that, that was the biggest difference for me. I'm just trying to adjust to that and um, not try to solve all the problems like I'm usually having to do. And it was just a wonderful experience. We all had trailers, and we would kind of we didn't do a whole lot on the movie. There were a lot of puppeteers, so we had a lot of free time, a lot of frisbee, a lot of eating, a lot of hanging out in each other's trailers. But another thing that I'll never forget is a lot of at least a few of the original Muppeteers were there, and just hanging out with those guys, that was so cool. Jerry Nelson and Carol Spinney, just It was awesome. It was a great couple of months for sure.
Do you have are there moments in that film where you can look at it and go, "Oh, that's me right there. That's my character walking around."
That's funny. I never watched it. I never could bring myself. I am actually not as a puppet, but as myself in that film as a snow cone man on Sesame Street. They apparently didn't that character didn't get cast, and so they just said you go up there and be the snow cone man. So I've never seen that part either, but I did a lot of seconding, a lot of hands, not a lot of. I did a lot of background stuff. I think I did some grouches in the background, but I really can't remember. I got to second Telly with Marty for one scene. That was fun. He's a great guy. He's a good friend that I don't see near enough. So those are my memories.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, as you mentioned, you wear a lot of hats at Gray Seal Puppets, doing everything. But can you? And this doesn't need to be detailed, but I just think it'd be interesting. To what are your steps of puppet building at Gray Seal? Like, I assume it starts with a drawing. Is that where everything begins? Is a drawing?
Well, I guess it depends on what we're working on because we do a lot of custom characters for people here, a lot of like sports teams, mascots, things like that. So there we have a more definite starting point, and I have a rendering artist here that I use. He's really good because he's a cartoonist, but he also is a puppeteer. So he also worked on mascot characters a lot. So he has that sort of inner knowledge of he can draw it, but he also knows how to draw it so that it will function correctly. So for our custom stuff, we do usually do start from a rendering of a character. But for my own stuff, we just finished a new show. I'm not really good at drawing, so I tend to sort of just start creating in whatever medium the character is going to be made out of. And I sort of have a mental image of what that character is going to look like, but I fancy myself more as a sculptor rather than a somebody that's going to draw the character. So that's usually how my own personal characters for the stuff in our performances. That's kind of how I start out.
And do you have other? Are there other people who work? I mean, you mentioned the rendering artist, but who work at Gray Seal who help you out, or is it mostly just you?
So there's a woman, Vanya Reckard, who's we've worked together for a long, long time. She actually came to Grace Hill Puppets when she was in college as an intern, and she's never left. So she does the heavy costuming work, especially on these mascots. She does the bodies, the hands, and she's fantastic. I live in the Low Country of South Carolina. We're both from Charlotte, but my wife and I moved down here to a little tiny town on the South Carolina coast, and I have this studio in what was the hardware store in this little village. And we just have an amazing life here. And Vanya is still in Charlotte, so we have a lot of, which is about 4 hours away. We have a lot of long-term meetings, Zoom meetings, a lot of like these clandestine meetings in parking lots where we're handing off various body parts and things like that. But she set up a shop in her home, and that's worked. That formula's worked. So she's sort of another component, and then I have freelancers who help out, like Dave McDonald, the rendering artist, really wonderful. He used to be. When we were in Charlotte, Grace Hill Puppets was larger. There was like 7 or 8 of us working, and when we moved here, I sort of made the conscious decision of simplifying, downsizing, and that's why we're kind of down to a bare bones sort of staff, I guess.
Now, you mentioned that not only do you build puppets, you also build these full body mascot costumes. How difficult is it to translate a design into something that's much bigger than just a regular hand puppet?
Yeah, I think exaggeration has always been kind of a part of our work. So again, the renderings really help, and it's really all about the focus sort of shifts on, of course, what it looks like in the end, but also about durability. Some of these sports teams guys that are in these things, especially the baseball player, baseball teams that we work with, a lot of games, usually hot, so there's a lot of sweat. So they have to really, we have to think along those lines as well, that they can't just look good, they have to hold up, they have to be durable, they have to be washable. And what do we have to do to be able to get to that? It's kind of what the road we kind of go down there, and we use constantly looking for different materials to try to find that durability.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think mascots, like, you see them out there and they're going crazy, like they're,
Yeah,
running around and jumping and diving and all sorts of things.
yeah, and that's a real love hate thing for us because we're like and then we're like, yeah, go ahead, tear it up, and come on back for another one.
Right, right. Well, I think one of the difficult aspects of being creative and having a creative business, kind of like Gray Seal Puppets, is figuring out how much to charge people for your services. Was this an easy or difficult process to figure out as Gray Seal Puppets grew?
I agree. That is, you're sort of walking the line. Is like what can people afford, and what can you do it for, and be comfortable. That's the worst thing to hear when you tell somebody a cost, is when they say, "Oh, is that all?" And you were like, "Oh, wait, is that what I said?" No, what I meant was, but we try to be fair, we try to be reasonable, and we work on a sort of a zone. The farther away we get from home, I learned early on that, this is just my opinion, that clients that we work with, potential sponsors that bring us in, I think one fee, one cost is better than saying, well, this is what the show costs, and this is our travel cost, and this is our hotel cost. So we just give them one figure, which includes everything. And we try to calculate that on the farther away from Charlotte that we get. We have different price for, say, 150 miles or 250 miles. So just depending on the zone that the people are in, also affects the cost as well.
Now, on your website, it's kind of broken up into three categories. You have on-stage productions, you have on-camera productions, and you have character design, custom character design. Do you
Right.
feel that there is one of those categories that brings in more for Gray Seal, or is it pretty even?
That's a great question. And that business plan, especially through the pandemic, is something that's always worked for us, because so there's three irons in the fire, like you said. There's on camera, on stage, and then this custom construction. So the idea is, if one of those areas slows down, then another will pick up. So there's different revenue streams, so that you're, hopefully in a good place financially, so that even though the three areas are fluctuating, that fluctuation meets in the middle to create a comfortable living. And that, of course, that's not always the case, but that's the idea. And that usually is the case. I will say that the building of these mascot characters and custom puppets for people, that stays pretty constant. We do, because we're so small, we do, say, one mascot at a time, and we may allow a month in our building schedule for that mascot. So it's not like we're cranking out tens and tens of mascot characters, but we're small, and we sort of approach one in a very individual sense, in regard to the patterns, in regards to the look of the characters. So since we're so small, we're able to kind of give that special look to each character. And then sort of mix in there performances, live performances in schools and theaters. That dynamic kind of changes the school year. I do a lot of library performances in the summers. So it's a lot of ebb and flow in the three different areas that we're in.
I think a lot of times puppeteers feel, if they want to be a puppeteer and all they're seeing on TV is, the Muppets or Sesame Street or something like that, they might feel like, oh, I have to go to LA or I have to go to New York to make a living in puppetry. And I think what's really great about Gray Seal Puppets is not that Charlotte's a tiny place, because it's it's not, but you've been able to make this living not in LA and not in New York, and this is your life. And I think it's just great because it shows, if you're determined, you can make puppets work where you are.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great thing. One good thing about Charlotte is sort of central on the East Coast, so it was good to tour north and south. A lot of interstates rolling in and out of there, so it was good to travel out of there. It's a little different where I am now, here in McClellanville, South Carolina, because this is sort of nothing comes here. You got to make a concerted effort to go somewhere from here. But it's so beautiful here. I'll take that anytime. Charlotte is a much different theater arts town than it was when I was growing up. So there's a lot of amazing things going on there. We do a lot of collaborating with the other arts groups in Charlotte. So there's that bonus, that's so strengthening for a performer to be able to work with other groups, I think. Collaboration, just amazing. So I never had a desire really to kind of go to New York or to LA, or we were close enough to the Center for Puppetry Arts to have a performance relationship with them, see and have to get to see that place become what it's become. We were one of the very first performers when they opened the Center for Puppetry Arts, and I was just telling somebody about the Children's Theater in Charlotte, and it's an amazing building now, part of a building called Imaginon that houses the Children's Theater of Charlotte as well as a children's library. But when we started doing shows at the Children's Theater of Charlotte, it was in an old theater, really cool old theater. And I remember I would have to climb a ladder up to the booth, turn the house lights off, climb down the ladder, run down to the basement, run through the basement, climb up the stairs backstage, and then come out on stage and do the show. And now it's like this amazing, one of the most amazing children's theaters in the country. So it's really great to see that sort of metamorphosis.
Yeah, for sure. And you were there back before they had a lighting booth, I guess.
Yeah. Well, they had something. I don't know. Something you had to climb a ladder up. And that was when I was in high school. So that was cool. That was awesome doing stuff there.
Well, I have to ask you about the phone book because, and just to tell my personal story with the phone book was, I just decided one day, I was like, how do you build a puppet? And this was before you could look on YouTube and find 5 different tutorials that show you how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, and I could be wrong about this, but at the time, and, we did have the internet and searching. Yours was the only book that was really talking about how to make these kind of hand puppets that were popular on TV. There was like marionette books and rod puppet, things and stuff like that. But yours was really the first one that I found anyway that showed that process. So I would love to know what made you decide to share that process in the form of the phone book.
Yeah, those are all really great thoughts and questions. And I'm constantly amazed, like you just said, at the wealth of stuff out there now, through social media, YouTube. There's just seems like there's so many more puppeteers now than there ever was. So it's really amazing and wonderful to see the work of all these people, and that we have access to seeing all of that work. I guess there is a little predecessor to the phone book called The Wit and Wisdom of Polyphone Puppet Construction that Donald Devitt and I wrote together. He and I worked together for many years, and it's a little sort of a different format than the phone book, and had really wonderful drawings by a puppeteer named Bob Lynch. And it's just like a little, it's a step above a pamphlet, but we had a lot of fun writing that. Have you ever seen that book?
No, I haven't. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up.
It's hard to find. I have a few kind of random copies here, but we did several printings of that book when we were just encouraged by a lot of puppeteers, and especially by a lady named Marilyn Myers, who was a kind of a big deal in the P of A for a long time. She was like, "Oh, you got to write a book. You got to write a book that tells more than the wit and wisdom." And so we ended up writing the phone book, and it was just a way of sort of getting all these methods that we sort of stumbled upon, just putting them down and putting them out there for people to see and to try to use. I don't think we ever thought that it would be as popular as it was, if it is popular. But a lot of people come up to me, like you said, and said it was a really valuable resource when there weren't a lot of resources around. So that makes you feel good, that you can help your craft and help your theater form out by providing something like that. And then, of course, a lot of people said, I love the book, but this doesn't make any sense. They had trouble sort of, and I get it. I have trouble. Like sometimes I'll go back and read it, and I was like, I have no idea what we were talking about here. But so that sort of led to the on camera versions of the illustrating what we were trying to say in the book, and those are really popular too. So,
Yeah, yeah, I had the VHS. I think I had both VHS tapes as well, and I there were many an afternoon where I was building and I'm, something I got glue drawing and I'm flipping through the book trying to wait, well,
yep,
what am I supposed to do here? So
yeah,
it was just a great book. And the one that I really loved about it was that you kind of showed and this is my memory of it. You kind of showed two styles. So it was like, here's like you can pattern something out and you can lay this out and you can cut this pattern and it fits together to make a round head. But then you also had this folding method, which
yeah,
for me, because I have never been able to get to grab, my brain just can't grasp that here's a flat thing, but you're going to make it round, that
yeah,
whole
yeah.
patterning thing. And so that folding thing was like a huge revelation to me, was like, oh, I can just play with this and like kind of glue things together and see how they look. And it was just genius. And I used it a lot.
That I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier about trying to use foam more as a sculptor than sort of a two-dimensional artist. It's just taking that foam and it's foam, so you're really in charge. The foam doesn't have a chance, so you can make that foam do what you want it to do. And the first time that I folded that foam and a nose popped out, it was sort of a Geppetto kind of moment, where it's like, oh, there's a character in here. I see it. It's coming right out at me from this foam, and that was amazing. And that's funny. I was just talking to somebody about a production we were in, a collaboration in Charlotte, and it was a Christmas show, and we had this. We made a camel. It was sort of a two-person camel. I was in the front, and you would work the head of the camel on a rod, but then on the two humps of the camel, we had the three wise men, all three riding one camel, and so the puppeteer in the back hump and doing the back legs. He had both his arms up doing two wise men. I was doing the head of the camel and the other wise man. And those wise men were the first time that I really did that nip and tuck technique. And I was like, yeah, these are really cool. So that was just, it was funny you should mention that because we were just talking about that the other day. So it's cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you said, oh, I don't know if the phone book is popular. I looked to see. I go, oh, is this still available? And I looked on Amazon. There's a copy for $630 right
Are you
now on
serious?
yeah,
Oh,
on
man,
Amazon. So it
that's
must be
ridiculous.
popular somewhere.
Yeah, well, I think there's still a Kindle version available on Amazon, but I've seen some of these bootlegs stuff. There's like somebody sent me. They were like, "I'm trying to figure out this," and they sent a picture of a page of the phone book, but it wasn't. It was like a different format, and it was like it had been Xeroxed uh, and like stapled together. And I was like, "Where did you get that?" And they were like, oh, I don't know. A friend of mine gave it to me. And then somebody, we did a production. Donald Devin and I did a production. It was a stage production called The Monster Show, and it was that same formula of just short little vignettes, just wacky characters doing wacky things. And we decided to do a video, an on camera version of that performance, and it was sort of the dawn of kind of digitally generated backgrounds, and we used these sort of now they're kind of horrible looking, looking back, horrible looking backgrounds, but it was really interesting stuff. And I've had this flurry of puppeteers contacting me about this monster show. It's like a little cult of people that have it's on YouTube, I think, and they're like, "What is this all about? This is were you smoking dope? What were you doing when you made this?" Uh, and it's just amazing that it's still out there, and people are still digging it to some degree. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, the phone book was huge. I mean, that's how I learned to build puppets, was that, and
Well, that's
just
awesome.
thank you for sharing your knowledge and helping I'm sure more than just me figured that out. Well, when I told some people that I was interviewing you, Julie Scarborough from the Center for Puppetry Arts
Yeah.
said you have to ask him about the Bojangles chicken. So I want to ask about that. And for anyone listening who doesn't know, Bojangles is sort of a chicken restaurant chain, sort of like Kentucky Fried Chicken a little bit.
Right.
Now here's a family that knows how to get a fast meal without fast food flavor, like Bojangles 8-piece box with 4 free biscuits. Bojangles chicken and biscuits are always fresh, never frozen. Bojangles 8-piece box with 4 free biscuits is a lot of chicken and biscuits for $6.99. Just because it's quick, easy, and priced right doesn't mean it has to taste like fast food, right?
Nice hair, man.
Don't forget, Bojangles is always open till midnight.
You performed this Bojangles chicken in several commercials. How did that opportunity come about?
Yeah, that was really great. That was one of the most rewarding on-camera experiences I had. There was a guy with an ad agency in Charlotte who I would see him at the Y when we would both go there and work out. So he knew what I did, and we talked about that. So one of their clients was Bojangles, and so he pitched this idea of a chicken puppet. I don't know that he was thinking about us doing the character, but he pitched this idea to them. And this chicken has no appendages. It's just sort of a head and like a tube for a body. And they liked it, and so they came to us, and we created the character, and probably had like a 3-year campaign, which was good. You know, they're constantly changing. So we had to build up for every spot, every commercial. There was like a different, you know, that the character had to be able to do something specific. So we built a lot of versions of them. But there was one, they called him the little guy. That's what they called that character. And it's just really neat because as a puppeteer, you had to get all the emotion out of whatever I did with the head or the neck, you know, a lot of body language, because you couldn't gesture with any kind of appendage. So that was really neat. And the other thing that was interesting about that, I couldn't get a voice that they wanted. They wanted like a really understated voice. So they ended up using another guy to do that character's voice. So I was lip syncing to the tracks, which is not normal for us either. So that was just, you know, usually the dialogue for me on camera is more organic, you know, so you sort of build stuff into what the puppet's doing. But this, you know, you really had to pay attention to every syllable, every little sort of mouth movement. So that was different. They had really good food on that set too. Not always Bojangles. They catered in a lot of stuff. So all about food.
Yeah, Drew, this should be a food podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm all for that.
The foods of puppetry. Here we go.
Yeah. But Julie, I've been friends with her for a long time. She's a wonderful person. So.
Yeah. That was the first thing she asked, was like, you have to ask him about this, you know, when I said that I was interviewing you.
A lot of those spots are at our YouTube channel, Grace Hill Puppets YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'll put some links in the show notes so people can go check them out. Okay. I also wanted to ask you, and I believe there's clips of this on your channel as well, Seymour Goodstuff, the elephant character.
Miss Beverly.
Yes.
You won't believe what happened in math class today.
Okay, what happened, Seymour?
Well, I raised my hand and I answered a really hard question.
Oh, wow, I am so proud of you, Seymour.
I don't know what came over me. It was just like a feeling. Even though I was nervous, I really wanted to answer that question.
Oh, Seymour, that was so courageous of you. Even though it was a hard question, you used courage and you answered the question correctly. Way to go, Seymour.
Oh, hooray for courage.
Yes, courage.
Was that local PBS? Is that what you did that for?
Yes, that was local PBS. That's one of the few characters that I actually did do a drawing for that character. So that's one of the few characters that, you know, sort of took from just a German idea all the way through the creative process. And just a wonderful character, really well-developed personality. Again, short little blast, sort of interstitial kind of format. And his human cohort, Beverly Dornsteele, was just really joy to work with, and a joyful person. when she retired, that was sort of the end of Seymour. So he's just here hanging out on the shelf, not playing golf or anything like that. But I guess he's enjoying his retirement. He's right next to the Bojangles chicken. They're all hanging out.
Let me ask you that, because that leads to another question. It's that character of Seymour Goodstuff. Now, do you own that character, or is that character owned by PBS? Or like, if you wanted to make YouTube videos with him, could you do that? Or
Yeah, that was a gray area that never was spelled out. It was spelled out that we would retain the character, so he is here, but I don't do anything on camera with him. I do sometimes I go to high school theater classes and talk to them about puppets, which sidebar to that is that's a wonderful experience, because these high school theater students, they've gotten over that hump of that they're too cool for puppets, which happens earlier in there's like that 4th to 8th grade where there's like no puppets. But now they're like really passionate, and sometimes I see the gears kind of turning that maybe they could try something like this. But usually, if I'm in Charlotte doing this, the last character I'll take out is Seymour Goodstuff, and man, there's these gasps, and the iPads come out, and it's really wonderful to see. And then when they hear the voice, they I'm sure you get this as a puppeteer. You're like, get asked this, like, do you do the voice? I'm like, well, yeah, but that's the easy part. It's nobody cares who's manipulating this character. It's yeah, I do the voice, but what about how he, the rest of them? Nobody seems to care about that. But when they hear his voice, they kind of freak out. So.
Yeah. Well, it's a fun character, and I'll put some links to that in the show notes as well. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about, well, I guess I got 2 more on-camera things to talk to you about, is you did these great series of commercials for the Donegal Insurance Group, where it's they're all numbers, and it's just a really fun series of commercials where all the puppets are these great numbers. Yes,
that was an ad agency, Weber ad agency. They were in Pennsylvania, and that was obviously all green screen stuff. Art Gruenberger, do you know Art?
Yes, we've had him on the show. Yeah.
Nice. Well, he's a good friend of mine, and I asked him to come puppeteer with me, and he was amazing, wonderful. So we puppeteered on those, built those characters here. The design, what they wanted, they kind of had those cut in mouths, and that's what I always think about it. The mouths were kind of hard to open and close. So I never really got that 100% the way I wanted, but I really like them too. I think they're really funny. They're really well written. I really like the Private Eye one with the 7.
I could tell she was in trouble.
I need to find something. And Eddie the 8 says you're lucky that way.
Everybody knows 8's crazy.
This tells me I can save hundreds by switching my car insurance to Donegal.
Sweet deal. What's missing?
The catch.
I told her there was no catch. For most safe drivers, Donegal offers lower car insurance rates. Case closed. No charge. Anything else troubling you?
That hat doesn't fit your head.
Donegal, let our numbers talk to you.
That girl, this is amazing. The girl that's sort of the foil, and just the way they lit it, and everything that they did in the genre, it's really cool. So that, I miss those guys too. They kept those puppets, so they're up there somewhere, and I think that was all agreed to early on.
Yeah. And then more recently, you built some puppets for The Eyes of Tammy Faye, the film, recently, because Tammy Faye had this background of, and I think Jim as well, Jim Baker, had this background of a puppet show when they were starting out.
Yes. And that was sort of a full circle, because both Vanya and I grew up in Charlotte. So we saw all this happening before our eyes, the rise and the fall of these crazy people. So to be able to work on this film, it was wonderful. And Vanya actually went and puppeteered on set. I sort of built some of the puppet sets to look like what they were would have used back when Tammy was doing it on the PTO Club. Built those here, built some puppets, modified some existing puppets. They just wanted some puppets kind of lying around. But in the end, I don't think they used near as much as we thought they were going to, or as many of the puppets as we worked with the prop master, which is, always nice to think of puppets as props. That's what, but that's where we were. And
Yeah.
he and System Prop Master, they were amazing to work with, really supportive, great guys. So that was fun. It was fun. It was nice to see the finished project, and nice to be able to finally say something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about your sort of traveling shows, your on-stage shows that you go and do. And one thing I noticed is on your website, you state that you travel with your own staging, sound, and light systems in addition to the puppets. What secrets have you learned over the years of making this equipment easy to travel with? Because it could easily fill up the entire backseat of a car if you let it.
Right, for sure. So yeah, we definitely tried to streamline that over the years and make it as economical as possible. So when I roll into a place, all of my show boxes, I have a box for each show. So I can basically have all my stuff in 2 trips, which is the idea. And then I've just found, if something's, all of this stuff is really durable because I put it through hell. I'm not really gentle with it. I'm constantly repainting frames, doing a little maintenance. But this system of all the tech stuff on a dolly, everything else kind of rolling along with the puppets in a crate, that seems to have worked well.
For these shows that you do where you go to libraries and schools, do you write your own shows? Are these all things that you've written and come up with?
Yeah, yeah. So it's either original stories or we'll adapt an existing story. I'm trying to think, like I have a show called Bathtub Pirates, which is a real original story about really about using your imagination. It's about pirates that take over a little boy's tub, and he finally realizes that it was cool to begin with, but it's really not that cool, and he needs to get rid of them. But in actuality, what it is maybe this little boy taking a bath and looking around the bathroom and turning the different objects that he sees into these characters. So all the characters are made out of scrub brushes and things that you might find in the bathroom. So that's an example of an original story, but we do a couple of Hans Christian Andersen tales that we've adapted. Emperor's New Clothes. We just opened a new production of Hans Christian Andersen's The Nightingale. It's incredibly relevant, I think, to today's times, device dependency, mindfulness, materialism. All those themes are inherent in that story that he wrote in 1842, but they're alive and well today. So I think it's, I just premiered that at the end of December. Well, I'm pretty happy with it. So keep working on that, honing that. Paid rehearsals, that's what we like to call them.
Sorry, I wanted to ask about the Nightingale, if I can, here for a second, because there were some clips that I saw online, and what I really love is it's sort of a great mix between you have these tabletop sort of puppets, but then you also have a shadow element to it too. Do you like combining those different styles of puppetry into your shows?
Absolutely. One of the first things we ask ourselves when we're working on a new show, so what's the best way to tell this story? What type of puppet? What type of staging? And that doesn't hold true for the whole story. So maybe it only a certain type of puppet only holds true for a component of that story. So in this sort of staging of the story, the shadow puppets are so great at advancing the story, being like a transition for the story. So I've always loved shadow puppets, and I love sprinkling them in with other styles of puppets, which is what we did here. So the tabletop is really nice because I'm serving as a storyteller too. So I'm out there with the puppets, but being able to transition to another scene via the shadow puppets, I think works really well for this story.
You also received a Henson Foundation grant to help create this show.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for puppeteers out there on applying for a Henson Foundation grant?
Well, I would say that I'm horrible at it. We've always been a for-profit company, so I never do grants. But I did the application in 2019 when everything came to a standstill around here because of the pandemic. So I had a lot of time on my hands. I knew I had this show coming up. There were like zero. There wasn't a lot of income, so I just took the time, and man, it took a lot of time. And it was just it was heavy stuff for me. It was hard to do. There were a lot of requirements in the application, like show us pictures of the puppets, provide pictures of the puppets. And I'm like, that's what I want the grant for, is to build these
Right.
puppets. So I was asking Z Briggs about that, and she's she's the foundation manager, and she's like, well, think of the grant as a way to finish up the production. So I kind of did like, and it was actually very helpful because it made me think more about the design of these characters early on in the process. So I did these sort of mock-ups of the characters, and foam outs is what we call them around here, where there's just sort of abstract foam pieces. And I did that same sort of approach with some of the shadow puppets. And then it ended up getting awarded a grant, which I was shocked at because I thought I was so bad at writing the grant. But it was very helpful, and of course it's a great feeling to have that and be able to hang that logo on this production. So I'm thankful.
For booking these, like you mentioned, library shows and school shows and things like that, do you go to, I know out here they have library conferences where you go and you perform and then different libraries can book you? Or are you at a point now where it's all just word of mouth and it's like, yep, we're going to get Gray Seal puppets to come in this season?
That's a great question too. And that's another thing that I'm horrible at, is marketing myself in person. But I do a couple of those. I don't do a lot of those. There's one in Raleigh, North Carolina, that's really well run, and a lot of neighboring counties come to this showcase because it's so well done. And I usually go to that one, although they were doing it virtually the last 2 years. And I did a virtual showcase the first year, which would be 2019. And then last year I decided not to do it because I don't have a lot of virtual content. And inexplicably, I got more bookings this year where I had like no presence as opposed to the year before. So I don't know the answer to that. I think if you're not out there and present and some sort of availability or content, or again presence, that people forget about you pretty quick. We get some return business, more so with our construction kind of end of the business, but I'm always fretful about keeping our name out there and visible in the sort of the live performance arena.
Well, your website is, as I was looking through it over the past couple days, I like that it's clean and it's simple and it's updated. Like you have a great calendar page that even shows what you're working on in the studio, so it shows that you're kind of busy doing all these projects. Do you find your website is an important tool in getting people to reach out to you?
I do, and we try to drive everybody to the website because I like it too. That was just a lucky. There's a couple here in McClellanville where we live who have that company, and I asked them if they would redo our site, and they came up with that design. I really like it too. I'm able to update the calendar myself, so it's not like I have to bother them. But like I've just shot him an email with the new Nightingale, like the photo press release study guide. He's already got it up on there, so it's a great asset to have in such a small little village. So I think in this day and age, the website is a really strong tool to use in your marketing. I wish I had more time to do more social media stuff. I'm amazed at the content that people can put out there, like the Swazzle guys. Those guys are amazing, the stuff they put out there. And I just see different puppeteers who just seem so visible through the content that they're able to produce. And I just don't have the time.
Yeah, it takes a lot. It's a lot.
It does, actually, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, you over the years have received several awards for your productions. And like you mentioned, the Bathtub Pirates, that got an UNIMA Citation of Excellence. And you've also won the Puppeteers of America's President's Award, and a few others. Is it sort of a badge of honor to have these awards over the years for the different productions that you've put on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're recognized by your peers, somebody's paying attention, somebody that is in your circle, that's always a good thing, I think. And the three citations that we've won are near and dear to my heart. They're front and center when people walk in here, and I think every puppeteer that's won a Unima citation feels that way about it. There's a real badge of honor to get that, and definitely not something that I would ever take lightly. And I feel strongly about Unima and Unima USA and what they're doing. I just got off the board, and was happy to put my energy into what they stand for.
Excellent. Well, Drew, as we wrap up, I always like to ask, what has been the highlight of your puppetry career so far?
That is a doozy of a question. I don't know, this is kind of a cop-out, but just being able to do this, and which I'm sure you get, everybody says that must be so much fun, and it's fun, but it's a job, as we all know, and it's a lot of work. But I'm very thankful that I have the freedom to be a maker and a creative person, and to see joy on people's faces, or see emotion, whether it's happiness or sadness, and that's being created by these characters that I'm doing. And just being able to do that for so long, all these years, and not having to be in a corporate position, or not having to be in a closed-in office, and not having to do the same thing every day from 9 to 5, but to have the freedom to do different things, to wear a different hat every day. That's the highlight for me. That is true. That's always been the case. I'm very thankful.
Well, I think that's perfect. Drew, Allison, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Grant. This has been really great. Thank you for thinking of me, and you're doing an awesome thing.
Thanks again to Drew Allison for being my guest on Under the Puppet. For links to Gray Seal puppets and to some of the things we discussed, check out the show notes for this episode number 68, over at underthepuppet.com. And if you'd like to hear even more of my talk with Drew Allison, download the free Under the Puppet app for iOS and Android and click on the gift icon in the listing for this episode. Now it's time to announce the winner of episode 67's giveaway for a Critterosity Glove Puppet Craft Kit from Swazzle. The question was, what project was Laura Bacon's first paid puppetry gig? And the answer was Les Miserables. And the winner is Mr. Malcolm's Rhythm Factory. Congratulations, Mr. Malcolm! Your Critterosity Glove Puppet Craft Kit is on the way. This episode, we're giving away a copy of the book that inspired Drew Allison, Marionettes, How to Make and Work Them by Helen Fling. This is the complete book of marionette craft, from making heads and constructing bodies to stringing the marionettes on 1- and 2-hand controls, operating the marionettes, and putting on your own shows. To be entered to win a copy of Marionettes, How to Make and Work Them by Helen Fling, all you have to do is answer this question from the episode you just heard. What was the name of the chicken that Drew Allison puppeteered in the Bojangles commercials? When you find the answer, send it in an email to underthepuppet@gmail.com with the subject line giveaway, and you'll be entered to win. All entries for this giveaway must be received by February 15th, 2022. The winner will be chosen at random from all correct entries and be announced on the March 2022 episode of the show. 1 entry per household. Good luck. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. I want to send a special thank you out to all of the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who help make this show possible. Patreon patrons at the producer level and above who get a special shout out are Vicky Sebring, David Akers, Tony Urbano, Kathy Crawford, Eve Cunning, and Dorothy Pachoco. To become a patron, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. If you have questions, suggestions, or feedback about the show, call our voicemail line at 818-806-9604, or click the Call the Show button in the free Under the Puppet app for iOS and Android. You can also send your questions and feedback via email to underthepuppet@gmail.com, or you can connect with the show on Instagram or Twitter by searching for Under the Puppet. And don't forget to tell a friend about the show. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time. This episode of Under the Puppet was edited by Steven Staver and featured music by Dan Ring. Help spread the word about the show by sharing your favorite Under the Puppet episode with a friend. Under the Puppet is copyright 2022 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Pachoco executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. Under the Puppet proudly presents The Adventures of Timmy the Tooth Reunion. In this almost 90-minute video, you will hear great stories from the cast and crew who brought this amazing puppet show to life. Plus, you'll see never-before-seen artwork and exclusive behind-the-scenes video. Under the Puppet's Timmy the Tooth Reunion is available right now at timmy.underthepuppet.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.